Hello and welcome. This is the Defense Cafe, the liberal security and defense podcast brought to you by the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom in Brussels. I'm Sebastian Vagt. I'm your host from the Friedrich Naumann Foundation.
And my name is Teresa Reiter. I'm a liberal defense policy enthusiast from Austria.
And today we will be meeting Eve Roehrig in Paris, who is a defense advisor in the Assemblée Nationale for Emmanuel Macron's party, République En Marche. And with her, we will be speaking about
France as a driver of integration in EU defense policy.
And about the impact of COVID-19 on security and defense.
France's very interesting relationship with the Western Balkans.
And last but not least, about animals in warfare.
Yes.
So we are here with Eve Roehrig. Hi, Eve.
Hi, Sebastian. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Eve.
Thanks for joining us. So Eve is working for La République En Marche, the party of Emmanuel Macron in the French National Assembly, as a defense policy advisor. That sounds exciting, Eve. Tell us a bit more about your background and how come you got to do that job?
Yes, so thank you, first of all, for inviting me today for the second episode of your podcast. I think it's a great idea to having it started, and I myself used to listen a lot of podcasts, especially in that period. So I wish you all the best with your project.
Thank you.
As you said, I'm French. I work at the National Assembly since 2017. And I work as a political advisor for defense and veterans issue for La République En Marche, Emmanuel Macron's political party. So it concretely means that I'm here for our MP, Member of Parliament, to help them prepare and analyze the legislation. And I also do assist our whip to coordinate our work and do the in-between with the government and other entities. And the question, your question was how I got attracted by defense issue. It's kind of a long story. First of all, I was willing to enter into politics after I graduated from Sciences Po and the Free University of Berlin in European affairs. But I started my career in the private sector for a couple of years. And in 2016, a young Minister of Economy, Emmanuel Macron, was starting to get really involved in his newly created movement En Marche. And I participated in his first meeting, and I got convinced that if I ever wanted to enter in politics, this should be now with him. So, after he won the presidential and the legislative election, I started to work in the parliament and became specialized in defense issues. So that's how it went.
Wow, yeah, that's quite an impressive story. And I believe you were part of a revolution. I remember to be as diplomatic as possible. I remember in past times when you walked into the Assemblée Nationale, it was not uncommon to find closed doors and elderly men with mustaches. And when I visited you for the first time in Paris, you found open doors. I saw young, energetic, open-minded people. There was a good gender balance. There were people with migration backgrounds. So it seemed to me like La République En Marche really brought a cultural revolution to the Assemblée, right?
Yeah, that's true. I'm happy that you've noticed it.
Well, yeah, and you are definitely part of that revolution.
Yes, I am. I am, and I'm really happy to be part of this experience, even though we are living in difficult times, but it's really exciting to be part of this moment, absolutely.
So let's jump right into our topic. Speaking of revolution, there is something quite revolutionary about French defense policy right now when it comes to the way Emmanuel Macron addresses this issue on a European level. So France with Macron at the helm seems to be the engine of European defense integration. But in times of crisis like now, talk about a European army has faded almost completely. We also saw that phenomenon with European cooperation when it comes to fighting COVID at the beginning of this crisis, I believe. Most countries seem to have a national reflex and seemed to feel more secure dealing with the corona situation on a national level. And it took quite a while until they remembered that cooperation in the EU is actually a helpful thing, even more in times of crisis. Do you see the same reflex maybe in the debate about security cooperation right now? Is a European army, including a European crisis response, just a topic for good times?
It's absolutely not only a topic of good times, absolutely not. Remember when Emmanuel Macron used the expression European army, it triggered a lot of debates in Europe, but also across the Atlantic. And before answering your question, maybe I would like to briefly come back on the debate and recall what Macron meant when he spoke about a European army, because at the time, it was the time of the European election. So this expression was used as a key word, making easier for everyone to understand the ultimate goal that we Europeans should seek for. And he defined a European army as a joint intervention force, with a common defense budget and a common doctrine to act. So, you know, it's a slow process that need to be worked on every day. And this debate does not date back from Emmanuel Macron. It has been a debate in the literature and among politicians for decades. And we are still answering that question since the end of the Second World War. And unfortunately, we haven't found a satisfactory answer yet. So for now on, what I see, as you said, European member states strongly disagree on the objectives that should be assigned to the European army. And they have this national reflex that we've been observing with the corona crisis. And it seems that they are not ready to share yet the core of the sovereignty, but still we are debating on this issue. And I think this is very, very, very positive. And the fact that in the media we don't speak about a European army yet, it doesn't mean that this is not, or this has stopped to be a topic of interest, because now we spoke more about the way to stop spreading the coronavirus, and it's better like this. And I hope we will work on developing a common answer to the crisis of the coronavirus, but also the future crisis. But all of this takes a lot of time, and I think it's the sense of history. And maybe I would like to stress to stop answering this question, that there were significant progresses that have been made in the past 2 days toward a European army or a European defense. And I especially think about the PESCO project that are really numerous right now, the European Intervention Initiative that has been very active to fight coronavirus. I think about an initiative between the Netherlands and France, for example. And maybe this year we're going to have the European Defense Fund that's going to be set up. So, we need to work harder and continue building a stronger Europe, talking about those issues. And in the end, I hope we're gonna come to a stronger integration.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there is maybe less reluctance in the member states when it comes to fighting the so-called new threats together on a European level, such as pandemics or cyber warfare or terrorism, than maybe traditional warfare? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's easier because maybe we have a shared understanding of these threats, since they are new and they are, touching every member state. So maybe yes.
So you've mentioned the European army, and you've also said that the European army can be as much as anything. For some, it is a way to save money. For others, it is a way for the European Union to become much more powerful. What is the European army that La République En Marche or the French government envisages, actually? I mean, we've talked to Reinaldus in the first episode, Reinaldus from Lithuania. And to Reinaldus, it was totally clear that the defense of Europe and of European territory would remain a task of NATO in the foreseeable future. What would be your response? Is it imaginable that even territorial defense of Europe could at some point in the near future become a task of a European army or European defense?
Maybe not in the near future, and I also want to agree with Reinaldas to say that Europe, the security of Europe relies on two very important pillars that are NATO, of course, but also Europe. And I want to recall also that European defense, so it's complementary to NATO, but that a strong European defense is a strong NATO. And you know, it works both ways, and it's very important not to forget one of these two pillars of the European defense. So strengthening the European defense is a very positive response to the well-founded demand by the United States for European accountability, as you were slightly mentioning it in your question. We have to be responsible for our security. We have allies that we can rely on, and this is great. But still, we have to consolidate those two pillars. I think it's very important.
Sure. It must be a bit frustrating, though, to see for Emmanuel Macron and for France to see that some of those European initiatives that you've just mentioned, for example, the European Defence Fund, seem not to live up to what they were supposed to be. I mean, when the European Defence Fund was first designed, it was supposed to entail more than 10 billion or almost 10 billion euros of funding. But now that the member states are negotiating the multi-annual framework, it seems to be one of the things that goes overboard first. The classical components of the EU budget, like the Common Agricultural Policy and the Cohesion Fund, remain very important, but something extra, like the European Defence Fund, is being trimmed down to only a quarter or a third what it was supposed to be. This must be frustrating. How do you see that?
Yes, it's absolutely frustrating, because the European Defence Fund was something very, very new and innovative and very important to build up a stronger Europe that has been called by Ursula von der Leyen. So I think the negotiations are still going on, and the budget is not decided yet. So I hope we're going to come to a compromise that preserves the balance of between the budget and the ambition for the fund, of course.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the notion that we cannot rely on Washington forever to stand up for European security, and that we have to be independent, has been around for a very long time and has been part of political speeches for a very long time. But I believe that maybe the corona situation in Europe right now has been a driver in another way for this approach to become independent, because the whole question of data sovereignty and the whole question of how much are we in danger to be manipulated by bigger stakeholders in the world came up quite a lot with Corona, now that everybody was using Zoom calls every day on a daily basis. And I think this whole issue is very closely connected to security as well.
Yes, you're right. But I think coming back on the first part of your intervention, that still the foreign policy of the US has been completely shifted toward Asia since the Obama presidency. And now with Trump being at the head of the US, and it can also be re-elected, we see clearly that our security interests can easily be questioned. With the end of the INF Treaty, the end soon of the Open Sky Treaty, the tension we have with or the US have with Iran, and the tension with Turkey as well. So I think the doubt on the credibility of Article 5 is a topic that should be discussed and also taken into account by all our allies in Europe.
And maybe adding also to what Teresa said, that the incredibly irresponsive behavior of Donald Trump during this corona crisis has probably also not exactly boosted European trust in its major ally. Yeah.
Of course, but at the same time, this corona crisis also showed us the importance of sovereignty. We've seen this with the debate about the mask, the protective mask that we use in our everyday life. We thought it was easy to have them imported from China, and from one day to the other, no masks are available, and there are this fierce competition between like almost all the countries in the world to get those masks first. So, the mask, this situation can be easily transported to situation in the defense sector. For example, with the ammunition or other piece that you need to build your defense systems.
Mm-hmm.
With almost half of our conversation now over, we will in a minute go to Teresa's favorite topic, which is the Balkans.
Yes,
but before we do that, allow me one more question that relates to the COVID situation. And we've seen now that European countries are committing or have already committed to paying huge amounts of their treasury for the recovery of the COVID-19 crisis. And that is creating huge question marks over future defense budgets. What do you believe, Eve? What will this discussion look like in France? Because France is now the major military power in the European Union. Can it keep up its current level of investment?
Well, this is something we are working on, and I think we have a good chance for us to maintain our military budgets the way it was planned before the COVID-19 crisis. And I think defense can be also part of the recovery plan. So I hope this is gonna work out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is it my turn with the Balkans now?
Now it's time to talk about the French friendship with the Balkans, exactly.
I was waiting impatiently for that moment. Finally, I get to talk about the Balkans. So yeah, the relationship between France and the Western Balkans is quite an interesting one, I guess, and one that has been talked about quite recently before all of this corona stuff happened, basically. So France is quite a big critic of the enlargement process and blocked the opening of accession talks with North Macedonia and Albania for a while. So I was thinking security cooperation, not only in a military sense, but also on a police level, would probably be much easier with these countries if they were members of the European Union. So is this an argument that doesn't count for Macron? Or does he believe otherwise? Is security of this particular EU backyard of less relevance to him than to other countries, maybe? Or what do you think?
I think that, first of all, Albania is a member of NATO for more than 10 years. We voted earlier this year the accession of North Macedonia to NATO, and we have plenty of discussion channel with those two countries to discuss security issues, but not only. So this is the first thing. And as you said, France was critic of the enlargement process, but not on the enlargement itself. And France was willing to reshape the process so that it becomes quicker and reversible. The current system is found to be very bureaucratic and consists simply on assimilating all the chapters of the communitary law, and lacks of politics. So Paris, I think, proposed to move to a step-by-step process in which the candidate states should successively cross different steps leading to EU membership. And at each step taken, they would begin to see the benefit of European membership by approaching certain mechanism or even funding. So that's the first thing. And France puts forward the need to reform the Union and straighten it before enlarging it. And I think that is one of the key marks of the enlargement vision of France. But in the end, there were no French blockage on this case for Northern Macedonia and Albania, because I think the process and the framework for the negotiation should be presented before the summer.
Yeah.
And so you see, I think it's good to have those debates on the enlargement process, and in the end, those two countries are gonna be part or are gonna start the process of the EU membership. And of course, the security of this region is fully relevant to us or to France. For example, in October, we voted to renew the defense agreement we have with Albania. And in this agreement, we allow closer cooperation on subjects of major interest to both states, France and Albania. Fight against radicalism, stabilization in the Balkans, securing the sea access, etc. And when we discussed in the parliament, I remember when we discussed in the parliament the accession of Northern Macedonia to NATO, it was also the moment for us to discuss our relation with Northern Macedonia and to try to give incentive to have a closer cooperation with this country. And I remember during the talks we have, we thought that it was a very positive for Northern Macedonia to enter NATO, to ease the tension between this country and Bulgaria, for example, and also to have more military cooperation with this country, because Northern Macedonia is also operating with NATO in Kosovo and also in Afghanistan, I think, and with the EU in the Central Republic of Africa, a country where France is also very involved. So we see there that we have a way that we can cooperate in a lot of fields.
I think that these were a lot of very relevant points, and I'm very happy that a positive decision has been made on the accession talks with North Macedonia and Albania. I mean, I would still be a little bit critical about the way France phrased its criticism, because I think most countries would agree that the enlargement process is flawed on many levels and too bureaucratic and everything you said. But it was right before important elections in France, and wording like Bosnia is a ticking time bomb maybe were not as helpful to renewing that process. But the explanation that I found for myself was that France's approach to, France's approach to the enlargement question was in a security sense, France's priorities and threat perceptions are somewhere completely else completely than many other countries. So transatlantic cooperation, the Sahel, whatever. There's a lot on France's mind in terms of security. So while
as well.
yes, but while in my country, for example, I'm from Austria, while any kind of decline in security in the Western Balkans, be it violent conflict, organized crime, Russian information warfare, Chinese influence, whatever, is felt as something that would have such a negative impact on the European security situation that I think is not quite comparable. Of course, all these security issues are relevant to all European states, but I think it was very interesting to me that there are different threat perceptions on the geographic level. Basically, I mean, it's basically the whole conversation that we are having in this group is threat perceptions differ depending on where you're from. So quite interesting. Quite interesting. I will note all your comments for my future Western Balkans discussions.
Talking now that Teresa has grilled you on one area where many people believe that France is not sharing enough of a European threat perception, maybe let's turn to a final point where I guess France believes that its European partners do not share its threat perception. And I'm talking about intervention mainly in the Sahel region. It seems a bit like France is the only country in the Western community left that still believes that military intervention can be a success. All others seem to be frustrated by their military adventures in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and so forth. How do you see that develop? I mean, will France keep up that belief? May it even convince others to rejoin at future intervention endeavors? Or do you think that also France is close to a point of frustration when it comes to that?
Well, you're right. France has been involved in numerous external operations, and today we have more than 30,000 soldiers deployed all over the world. Since we have like a lot of many occasions to exchange with our European partner, we can build up a common understanding of the geopolitical situation, and the Sahel region is part of it, absolutely. And by the summer, the Takuba task force should be set up in the Sahel region, and I think
what is that task force about?
Yes, so this task force is a project from the European Intervention Initiative, and it's a unit of special forces, of European special forces, that are going to help the Sahelian army and the Malian army to fight against terrorism in the Sahel. And in this task force, we're going to have many different countries, European countries, that are going to participate in.
So if I get you right, that means it's a European follow-up to the French mission Barkhane, is that correct?
I don't know if it's a follow-up, but it's a complementary unit that's going to act with the French forces deployed over there, but also with the NATO forces and the EU forces that are also training the local armies.
Mm-hmm.
So to go back on your question, like I was saying, we have 30,000 soldiers deployed all over the world, mostly in common operation with NATO, in the Baltic, in the UN, or with the EU. And France also had its own military operation. And of course, one can ask, why does France possess this passion for military intervention? Because the capacity to intervene military abroad guarantee France, but also Europe, a level of independence from other powers, and it guarantees also our strategic interest. The interventionist tradition relies on France's particular responsibility in the name of the values it carries as a member of the United Nations Security Council. And for France, it's also a question of history, interest, and of course, maintaining its influence in various regions, Africa traditionally, and the Middle East, etc. So,
sorry to interrupt. It sounds like there you have a perfect deal. Like you offer Germany a shared UN Security Council seat, and in return, you can have German support in the Sahel.
I don't know if the trade would be like this. I think France also has been calling for reform of the functioning of the UN system. So this could be also a discussion that could be. So this discussion on the seat of France or of Europe, of Germany in the United Nations Security Council can be discussed within this discussion of the reform of the UN.
I like the way whenever you talk about European integration, European defense, it's always also about values and the greater vision for something. So I think with you, I mean, I've known you for a while now, and what always strikes me is how much you believe in what you're doing. I mean, it's something I always liked about the whole family, but it really stands out with you. I like that a lot.
Thank you. But that's true.
Yeah. We will now go to our brutal finisher question here in the Defense
Most
Cafe.
important one.
Do you want to throw it at her, Teresa?
I really wanted to, because maybe we need to explain why this question is there, because you didn't do a very good job. You didn't do a very good job explaining it in the first episode. I mean, you're just all about animals, basically. Like since I met you, I talked to you about animals pretty much as I talked to you about defense policy. So, but usually it's birds. But this question, and I'm a big animal fan as well. I studied 2 semesters of biology, and I should have finished with biology. It would have been such a better life somehow. But the question that we want to ask you to finish up is, if European defense policy was an animal, what animal would you like it to be, and why?
I heard the first episode, the answer that gave Renaldas in the first episode. So I'm going to have a totally different answer. And I would say that the European defense right now is kind of a baby lion. It has a great potential, but it still needs to grow. And I hope the European Defense Union will rapidly emerge and be a powerful lion that can face all the other animals.
Wow,
I like that.
I like that too. And that would also probably change Ronaldo's mind completely about the European Union being able to defend his country.
Your lion is going to eat his hamster. But did you notice that in the email that we sent you with the topics that we want to talk about, the next sentence after the animal question is, let's bear in mind. And I thought, like, is he trying to bias her towards the bear? Is Sebastian trying to talk about bears and is just being really subtle?
He was trying to influence me.
Actually, the reason I came up with this question is that once I was moderating a rather big panel at the European Defense Industry Summit, which is a big conference in Brussels, and I wanted my moderation to be special. So I came up with this super silly question, and until the very moment that I asked it, I was still wondering if it was too silly or if it was okay. And I ended up really... and I ended up asking it, and it turned out that people loved it. They came up with super creative responses, and even following up panels were still talking about it. So I felt confirmed in choosing that question.
You see your positive impact in the world, making people talk about animals a lot.
The positive impact of animals, yes.
And there are a lot of animals in defense anyway. So
That's
they
very
look more
true.
like dogs, but we could be more creative.
There is I've once heard that the Austrian army used to have army fish, and that they were used to control the quality of water in so if the fish die. So it's like with a bird in a coal mine or something. So they used to see what water was still okay to drink. Yeah.
Wow, I have to check that on Wikipedia.
Yes, you have to. So you see, there are plenty of possibilities with the animals and army.
We will get back here in the Defense Cafe. We will have a complete episode on animals in warfare.
Yes.
And if you go, as a recommendation, if you go to the Military Museum in Dresden, there is a whole floor covering this chapter, Animals and Warfare.
Good recommendation.
I recommend you to go. I'm afraid our time is up, but it was a pleasure talking to both of you. Thank you so much, Eve, for being with us.
Yes, we see you soon. Bye, Eve.
See you soon. Thank you so much.
So, interesting perspectives from France. So the big question, Teresa, I guess, is whom should we meet next?
You know whom. He's wearing red pants wherever he goes.
The guy with the red pants.
I'm so sure he's desperately waiting for our call already. So we're obviously talking, very obviously, we are talking about Andras Radnoti from Hungary, from Momentum. Andras, would you like to join us next time? Give us a call.
I'm a bit afraid because he likes to talk a lot. I don't know if he will make the time limit.
He will never make the time limit. Fine.
Yeah, but he might be an interesting guy because he's also an expert on the Black Sea, which is a totally different corner than the corners that we have looked at so far. So let's invite Andras. Let's presume he will be accepting anyway. So the next episode number 3 with Andras Bratnodi. Tune in here. See you next time in the Defense Cafe.
See you next time. Ciao.